There's still something alive on Venus. For decades, scientists assumed that anything that might ever exist on Venus would be mercilessly destroyed. Extreme heat, atmospheric pressure that crushes even metal, and sulfuric acid rain. But now we know we were wrong.
Several space probes might have survived on the surface of Venus until this very day. We'll take a very close look at that today, and we're getting started right now.
This is one of the very few images we have to date of the surface of Venus, taken by the Soviet probe Venera 13 in 1982. Let me know what goes through your mind when you look at this panorama of an alien world. If you find such fascinating discoveries from space just as exciting as I do, then why not subscribe to the channel right now?
And if you've already subscribed, you can really help the video with a thumbs up. Let's try to hit 5,000 likes. The YouTube algorithm loves that. Thanks a lot, guys. Alright, and now off to Venus. The planet is our neighbor in the solar system, and at the same time something like hell on Earth. Or rather, hell away from Earth.
Temperatures on the surface reach around 467 degrees Celsius. That's hot enough to melt lead. The atmospheric pressure is about 92 times higher than on Earth's surface. Imagine diving nearly a kilometer deep into the ocean. That's what the surface of Venus feels like.
Less wet, but otherwise the pressure is the same. And as if that weren't enough, it rains sulfuric acid there.
Just singing in the rain, what a glorious feeling! Ah!
No wonder then that scientists previously assumed all probes that ever landed on Venus had long since been crushed into unrecognizable scrap and chemically dissolved. But researchers led by space archaeologist Luca Forasiepi have now disproved this very assumption. Between 1961 and 1984, the Soviets sent a total of 18 probes to Venus as part of the Venera and Vega programs. 10 of them actually landed on the surface of the hottest planet in the solar system. Some even sent back data and images. These were the first images ever taken directly from the surface of another planet. The longest survival time of one of these probes was a mere 2 hours after that silence. The early probes had a structural flaw that proved to be their undoing. They were built at a time when scientists believed Venus might have oceans on its surface, similar to Earth. For a long time, it was actually assumed that Venus was Earth's sister planet.
Venera 3 was even designed for a water landing, so that went about as well as you'd expect. A bit like wanting to go out on a lava flow and bringing an inflatable boat as equipment. I had an AI visualize that for me.
Damn Chinese quality!
The reality on Venus was brutal. When Venera 4 conducted the first direct measurement of Venus's atmosphere in 1967, scientists had to radically rethink their view of our neighboring planet. As the researchers explain in their new study, none of these early landers survived the impact in working order. They were deformed by the pressure and in a sense cooked by the extreme heat. But, and this is crucial, that doesn't mean their metallic remains simply vanished. The scientists didn't just look at what happened to the probes immediately after landing. They examined 20 objects, landers, probes, and balloons that the US and the Soviet Union have sent to Venus over the past 60 years. And for each one, they systematically analyzed the geological and atmospheric conditions prevailing at the respective landing sites today. Volcanism, seismic activity, sediment deposits, meteorite impacts, everything was taken into account.
For their case study, they used data from NASA's Gear Lab, the Glenn Extreme Environment Rig, which can reproduce the conditions in the most extreme and bizarre places in the solar system.
Among other things, they investigated how NASA's Pioneer Venus Day probe behaves under Venusian conditions. The result is astonishing. Titanium, which makes up many parts of the probe, demonstrates excellent resistance to the Venusian atmosphere in these simulations. Aluminum also performed better than expected. More problematic were the O-rings and sealing materials, which would fail over time due to the corrosive atmosphere, likely leading to some deformation of the probes.
But destroyed? Completely dissolved? Scientists don't believe that. The probes may look deformed, rusted, and battered, but they are still there.
Forasiepi himself puts it with a confidence not often heard in science. I am very confident that if we ever have the opportunity to photograph one of these artifacts on the surface, we will find it exactly where we left it. The research team concludes that at least 7 probes have a good chance of having survived the decades on Venus: Venera 5, 6, 7, and 10, Vega 1 and 2, and NASA's Pioneer Venus Night probe.
Back then, they were still built for eternity. But why exactly might the probes have survived? A key factor is the surprisingly low geological activity on Venus.
Although there are volcanoes and Venusian earthquakes compared to Earth, everything happens at a very leisurely pace. Sediment deposition on Venus is extremely slow. The researchers speak of a high potential for preservation of the landers in the planet's vast lowlands. There is one danger, however, the supercritical carbon dioxide, which begins at an altitude of about 12 kilometers above the surface of Venus, behaves like a liquid and can penetrate the tiniest openings in the probes, much like a solvent. This would likely have caused internal damage to some probes, yet even that does not rule out the possibility that at least a large part of the structure has been preserved. Beth O'Leary, a space archaeologist at New Mexico State University, sums it up. This study expands the field of space archaeology to a place where we thought, forget it, there's nothing left to find there.
By the way, what an exciting job space archaeologist is. I think if YouTube ever ceases to exist, I'll definitely switch careers. But jokes aside, this is exactly where the fascinating part of this story lies.
Because these probes aren't just scrap metal on a foreign planet, they're part of humanity's cultural heritage, the first artifacts we've ever left behind on another planet. Space archaeology sounds like science fiction, but it's a real science that examines what human artifacts in space reveal about our technological development. Forasiepi sums it up. Venus is part of a broader effort to study all our material traces in the solar system. The fact that it is very difficult to access in no way diminishes its cultural and historical value.
And when you think about it, somewhere on the surface of Venus, Venera 7 is lying right now. The probe that in 1970 was the first ever to successfully send data from the surface of another planet.
For 23 minutes, it transmitted data before falling silent. 23 minutes that changed the history of spaceflight, and based on what we now know, we really have to assume it's still there. Crushed, corroded by sulfuric acid, but it's still there. I find that somehow very beautiful and poetic, and perhaps future missions will rediscover these probes. NASA is planning a probe called Da Vinci, which is scheduled to land on Venus around 2030. The private company Rocket Lab and MIT even want to launch a mission as early as this year. If one of these probes carries camera equipment, we might actually see a photo of Venera 7 someday. Crushed, rusted, but still defying the elements.
Kind of like my knee joints. If you want to be notified right away whenever something exciting happens in the world of science, then remember to subscribe to the channel now. Oh, and every new subscriber helps more than you can imagine. Also leave a thumbs up so we can break the 5,000 likes mark. And speaking of scientific breakthroughs, let's switch from Venus to Earth. Do you still remember the Hunga Tonga volcanic eruption?
It shook the world in 2022, literally. Scientists have now discovered that this eruption altered the global climate, with effects that were felt worldwide. In the next video, we'll take a close look at exactly how that works and what it tells us about the future of the climate. Click in the top right corner. As always, in the bottom right corner, you'll find another exciting topic from the worlds of science and space. Otherwise, I'd say see you in the next video. Take care, everyone.